I'm so excited to have you here with us, Eric. Thank you so much for saying yes to an interview with ECF Vital Practices. I would love for you to introduce yourself.
My name is Eric Law. I'm the Executive Director and founder of the Kaleidoscope Institute, which is an organization that provide training resources to equip local church leaders to create sustainable communities and churches. And so for the last 5-6 years, my work has focused in an area called Holy Currencies, which is about 6 essential blessings that need to flow through any ministry and churches in order for it to be sustainable and missional. And it's a holistic approach to being church. And so it's been getting a lot of traction, and really excited to see congregation transform and become missional and sustainable. Those are the terms I use.
Yeah, that's something that everybody's talking about, I think, especially the sustainability, and missional has really become such a big word in our church. I'm going to quote a couple of things from Holy Currencies. When I started reading the chapter on wellness, the currency of wellness, I really loved where it says, the institutions of the Sabbath, the sabbatical year, and Jubilee are God's way of ensuring that economical, financial, and ecological resources will recover their healthy circulation. And later from there, it says the currency of wellness is a state of being healthy, physically, socially, economically, ecologically, and spiritually, both within your church or ministry, as well as in your neighborhood, town, or city. Later on in that chapter, you talk about lay ministers. So I would love for you to talk to us about that. How do we incorporate Sabbath in lay ministry?
The whole area of currency of wellness, which is really what all of our ministries is about, to foster wellness in ourselves, in our church community, and also in the neighborhood and in the nation and on the earth, right? If you think about all of your ministry, it really is about wellness. And so all the other currencies kind of work together to create wellness, right? So what is wellness, right? And Sabbath is the key to wellness, right? And so there are two ways to think about Sabbath, and sabbatical year and Jubilee. One is the rhythm of work and rest. Work, rest, I add play to it. Okay, so we physically, right, we have to sleep and rest, and then we're ready to go, and then we rest. So that rhythm of work, rest, and play is crucial, and having that rhythm is important. So that's the first thing. Second thing about wellness is that every so often we set the reset button. I was a computer system designer, right? One of the tricks that we do with computer is when things get really messy and everything gets stuck, what do? The first trick we know is we restart the thing, right? And start over again, right? And that's really what this is about. Sabbath is about pressing the reset button. For example, every 7 years, according to the Bible, we have to kind of start over again. Forgetting debts, letting the land rest, and so on. And so every so often, stop and rest and take a look at things and gain new perspective. A lot that's no accident. So many people take sabbatical, especially priests. That they come back with a new call to ministry, and there's no accident to that, right? And so every so often press the reset button. Very important. That's what Jubilee is about. Now, so in terms of lay ministry, right? Lay ministry, one of the echoing, that you think all the time, you hear all the time, is that the same 8 people do all the work, right? And then they complain that they're burned out, right? And then they're complaining nobody else is willing to do it, right? I mean, that's classic, right? Every church has that. And one of the things that I talked about is to engage those folks and engage everybody, every layperson who to consider Sabbath. And for example, in a lay volunteer job description, you should have a section on wellness, and that should include something like for every year someone served in the same position, they have to take a month off. So for a month, they cannot do that job. They just need to come to church and sit in the pews and be, right? It's like setting a reset button, right? It's very hard to do. Now, so the impact of that is if I were doing my job, my volunteer job, and I have to plan to take my month off to make sure the ministry continue, what do I need to do? So as part of my job description, this is very important for volunteer job description, to include training other people to do what I do. So that when I take my sabbatical for the month, that the job will be, it will be done, okay? And then I slowly work myself out of totally dependent on, become indispensable, right? When we become indispensable, that's trouble, okay? That means no one else can do the job, and then when you go, this thing died, right? And again, a lot of ministry started by a very charismatic lay leader, and then when they move away, it died, right? And that's not sustainable, right? Sustainability means having that rhythm, that rhythm. Every week, you have to rest. Every year, you have to take a month off. And you cannot, so I will add a third thing to the job description, that you cannot do the same job for more than 3 years. After 3 years, you had to take a year off from that job. Now you can take you can take something else, right? Take on something else, which is kind of great, right? But in order for you to take take a year off, okay, you have to prepare other people to do the job. So Sabbath become a way of empowering lay leaders. Okay, and so they're all connected.
But what do we do when people who feel like that is their call? How do you help people understand that there's that need for that break?
Well, I think first thing is that I would engage everybody in conversation and Bible study around Sabbath. Okay, so I would do that across the board. I would spend, a month of the year in the church to help everybody to understand Sabbath and sabbatical year, and really do a jubilee. The church do a jubilee event anyway every so often. That's the first thing. So that there is a theological grounding. This is required by God. Okay. So for example, let's take priests, right? Now Sabbath is the fourth commandment, I believe. I think I'm not Baptist, so I don't. And adultery is what, the fifth or sixth or something like that, right? Right. So if a priest break the fifth, the adultery commandment, the whole church will go crazy, right? But if the priest does not take a day off, which is also commanded by God, okay, every seventh day. Now, we had to redefine that a little bit because it's really hard to do every seventh day, right? But if a priest does not take a day off, what did the congregation say? Oh, she works so hard. God bless her, right?
Yeah.
And so we don't, as a culture, we don't value Sabbath, right? So the second thing I would do is that every lay ministry person who's doing the job should give a quarterly report, for example, or if not a monthly report, if his job is really important. Every job is important, but and so report should be either given to the congregation or to the vestry, and so on. And the report should include not just what I've done, what has been accomplished, but it includes how am I doing with my wellness? Okay, so as a priest, I go back to that because that's much more formal, right? I would do my monthly report and say I spent so much time doing this, doing that, and I did not do so well last month on my Sabbath. I skipped a couple of days, and that's not. I can feel it in my physical health and my spiritual health. And you let people know that. And then, so next month, I'm going to take 2 extra days to be with my family, really, and begin to help the vestry and the congregation to value Sabbath. So it needs to be modeled by the ordained leadership. Now, the vestry should also model that, and so every time someone give a report on the ministry, they should include, oh, I took my month off and it was really great. It was really a struggle, but I worked through it. And I took a different job to get a experience. So creating that discipline of reporting on your wellness, which includes spending time with family, doing exercise, prayer time. I do daily prayer, weekly prayer, or individual corporate prayer, building relationship with friends, and all of those part of wellness, right? To report all of those is important. So that's the second thing. There was a third thing. I can't seem to remember what it is. So for example, a choir member, right? They could take some time off and say that it's sabbatical year. They can switch over to doing something different. I'm not going to sing, but I'm going to teach 5 people to sing. Mm-hmm. And that's the Sabbath from having to perform, right? That rhythm is very different, right? I mean, I go to rehearsal and I got to get my adrenaline up and do it right? If you just stop that for 3 months and do a different kind of rhythm, what would that look like? But I think getting back to your question, if someone say I'm called to this ministry, then the call should include how you're going to take good care of yourself so you can continue to do the job, so that the ministry that you're part of will continue with or without you.
Yeah.
If you care about the ministry and not just about, you having to do it, right?
And I think that's key when you said that, how some people start some kind of ministry and then once they're gone, it dies. Mm-hmm. I think it's so important to remember that the ministry is God's and part of it, like you're saying, is wellness. Mm-hmm. It's very important. What about when a person take it too personally?
Mm-hmm. Going back to that overall understanding across the board, in terms of the church community. So to preempt that, I would begin to do a simple job description for every volunteer. It seems like a lot of work, but it's worth doing, which include what the job is about, and how many hours required, and that you are supposed to take a month off, and you can't have the job for more than 3 years or something similar to that, and make it a standard. So it's not targeting anybody, right? It's not like I don't like Sandra doing this anymore, and so no one take it so personal because everybody's getting it, right? That's one thing. The second thing is that this approach has to be relational. So if I were to work with you on a job that you've been doing for 10 years, I need to be your friends in order to, it's not like a boss thing, use the corporate model for this. But as a friend, let's find out what's going on with this ministry that you're doing and how, and have a conversation about that person's wellness, and also that person's that include the network that person have, and physical, spiritual wellness, and so on, and then engage that person to talk about how we love and the ministry that this person does, right? And that you apparently you do too, right? and then talk about how can this ministry continue? How can this ministry be sustainable,
Mm-hmm.
right? Um, and engage that person in the problem solving, right? If you and two other people are the only ones who've been doing for 10 years, the last 10 years, um, and they are all 90-year-old, right? Let's be real now. What will happen, if one of you go or one of you move away? How can we make sure this great ministry continues? So you display the personal thing into inviting them to consider the life of the church, the life of that ministry. Now, maybe some ministry needs to die.
Mm.
And that can happen too when you are in a relationship with this person, to say, eventually in the exploration that someone might say, or he or she might discover that this ministry might have run its course, and that she needs to take a sabbatical to think about what God is calling her to do next, right? But it needs to be in that faithful relationship that these can be addressed.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so to recap, do it across the board so they don't feel targeted, and then do it relationally and focus on their wellness and the ministry's wellness.
Any other tips?
Well, I think all paid staff should model this. So I would begin by looking at all the paid staff's job description, okay, and infuse the wellness piece in it, and leadership training. They are responsible for training other people to do it. So there is a sample job description in volunteer job description in Holy Currency Exchange.
Okay.
The next book, and take a look at that and modified it. We use that template for all of our KI volunteer and pay staff now.
Awesome.
And so it covers all the currencies. So take a look at that. But and I will start with pay staff. And when you do pay staff, and it should be reviewed by the whole vestry. And then you say maybe each vestry member should have one, and start there. And then they would say, if they see the value of that, is, I mean, if most churches has a rotating vestry thing, right? 3 years and then you rotate off. So that's kind of worked into it. Why, the question is, why do we need to do that, right? Well, because so other people can take leadership, right? So it's also already built in, but put it in a theological perspective would be important. And then spread it from the vestry to all the other volunteers.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. All right.
Thanks, Eric.